Good evening. To introduce myself, I am Angela Tate. I am the Chief Curator and Director of Collections here at the Museum of African American History, Boston and Nantucket. Do not forget Nantucket. That is also an integral part of our interpretation of Black history related to the meeting houses and the desegregation of public schools in Boston and also Massachusetts. I want to welcome you here. It is a privilege to gather with you in the meeting house on its 220th anniversary. It was built in 1806. Thank you. Thank you. So you are not sitting in the original pews. The last pew on my right side, that is the original pew, but this entire building was constructed by the Black community. It was funded by the Black community. And so it is a pleasure to be able to be in this space. But I also want to talk about why this event is here. Even though we only primarily interpret 19th century Black history in Boston and in Nantucket, this building and the history stands on a continuum of the history of the Pullman Porters here in Boston. It is a story of self-determination, it's a story of advocacy, it's a story of labor rights, it's a story of community. And the history here is special because on the north slope of Beacon Hill, this was a particular powerful stop on the Underground Railroad. Just up the street on the Black Heritage Trail, it marks the house of Lewis and Harriet Hayden. They were primarily well known for fighting against the slave catchers after the Fugitive Slave Act with guns. And at one point, they threatened to blow up their house if they were going to try to take someone back into slavery. How does that connect to the 20th century? Well, when you think about the Pullman Porters, they were also on a railroad, and that railroad also brought freedom to the Black community. And again, I moved to Boston about 18 months ago, and everyone told me there is no Black history in Boston. There also aren't any Black people in Boston. All of you were laughing because you're like, what am I? Am I a ghost or something? According to a lot of people, you are. So the fact that we continue to tell these stories in so many unique ways, from traditional exhibitions to tours of this space to events of this kind, we're really honing on the fact that there is a long Black history, but there is also a continued Black presence here in Boston. So without further ado, I'm also going to turn this over to Alicia, who is my partner in crime for introducing us to tonight's program.
Thank you and good evening. I am Alicia Reese, Strategic Partnerships and Impact Director at Silkroad, and it is truly my honor, my privilege to be here with you tonight. For those of you who are not familiar, Silkroad was founded over 20 years ago by internationally renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma. That name may sound familiar to some of you. He really had a question and sought to ask and answer what happens when strangers meet. And to answer that question, he brought together musicians from all over the world, many of which derived from the historical Silk Road, hence our name. This week-long experiment, if you will, resulted in really beautiful exchanges of music, of technique, but more importantly, were the exchanges of tradition, of values, of culture, of language. Lifelong friendships were forged that week. And 25 years later, we are still here, stronger than ever, a Grammy award-winning ensemble, hundreds of commissions, 10 albums, and now under the incredible leadership of the brilliant Rhiannon Giddens, a Pulitzer Prize award winner, a multi-Grammy award-winning musician, a literal genius, a MacArthur genius. And you all get to hear from her and other members of the ensemble tonight who are here this evening as a celebration of the American Railroad program that just had 3 tours, and we have really great educational resources, a podcast for those of you that are tuned in to Rhiannon's My Music with Rhiannon Giddens series on PBS. Season 2 is all about American Railroad. And when we learned of the really, really rich Pullman Porter history here in Boston, we knew this program was not over. And so we made some calls, and they answered, and in 0.5 seconds, we were able to put together a program. What's really special about tonight is the 3 musicians that you will hear from have never performed in this iteration of the ensemble before. So this is like a one-night only type of event that will live in perpetuity on YouTube, but you got to see it live. You got to see it live. And so with that, I would love to turn it back over as we continue our program.
So again, a lot of the joy that I found in my job here has been connecting with people who say there is not just a Black history and a Black president in Boston, but we still are here. And so I want to turn over to Chip Greenidge, who is going to ground us in that history and ground us in the remembrance that the Black community is still here and they're still doing good work. Thank you, Chip.
Give it up for Sister Angela. It feels so good to be in this wonderful building. Hi, everyone. My name is George Chip Greenidge, and I'm from Boston and Cambridge, and my family's been here since the middle of the 1800s. And I run a group called Greatest Minds, and also a Harvard Ash Fellow right now, a visiting fellow. But I want to shout out to the young people that are in the room and look at them and point at them and say, thank you for coming on down. Greatest Minds, wave your hand. There they are, all over. But today I want to give you a really interesting fact is that everyone remembers the pandemic. And I was sitting home and I was trying to figure out what to do. And one thing I started was Googling my name. Kind of bored, huh? But I Googled my name and a hit came up and it said George C. Greenidge, Pullman Porter. And I said, what? And it said 1950 something. And I said, the only George C. Greenidge is my great uncle Babe. And so I went down this rabbit hole because it was the pandemic. And I went to a Harvard research engine, and I found 97 articles written about him in 1954. 97. And let me tell you about George C. Greenidge right here. Here's a picture of him. Very handsome, huh? Family good looking. But let me tell you about him, is that in Roxbury, he was a Pullman Porter and came back from the war. And he came back from the war. He was an Army technician and so forth. He got a job as a Pullman Porter. But you guys know when Black men came back from the war, that GI Bill was not made for them. They cut them out so bad. And so when he came back very proud from the war, the only job he can get was a car cleaner. And so after seeing several white men were able to go and become an assistant conductor, in 1953, he challenged that and went to a government agency that was brand new called the Mass Commission Against Discrimination, and he put in a complaint that why should he not be able to be assistant conductor? Now, the Mass Commission Against Discrimination was a brand new kind of agency at that time, and they were toiling with trying to figure out ways how to do this. And he met a lawyer who was a Harvard graduate who took on this case, who was a commissioner. And what we found out in 1 year after that is that he was able to become the first assistant conductor in the nation. And this was like around May 11th, 1954. He filed in 1953. But to give you a little context back in Boston at that time, is that this was 2 weeks before Brown versus Board of Education. So everyone remember that poem, Paul Laurence Dunbar, We Wear the Mask? Think about the men and the women as well that were maids also on that, who wore the mask. There was no such words in the lexicon by microaggressions. They lived it. There was another word, emotional labor. Those weren't in the lexicon. But you know what? I want to just let people know that in Boston, we do have a rich history. And I want everybody in this room to start looking back and talking to your grandmothers, your grandmothers, your uncles, your great uncles, and everything, and find out about that rich history. Because we got a friend right here in this place that wants to document it and let the world know that Boston is about business. All right? So today I'd like to welcome that story as my great uncle, but I have a special treat. I have both of his daughters here and his great grandson, Cyrus. So Diane, Kim, who else is there? Diane, Kim, and Cyrus. Can you all stand up real quick? Come up, Cyrus. Come on up, Diane. Come on, Kim. Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. Come up. Come on up. Say, Diane, come on up. Cyrus, come up here. Anything we got 1 minute to do this. Anything you want to say? And where's Robin? Robin's here. And there's three of them are all here. Robin, come on up, please. Make her come on up. Robin, come on. We're going to stop the whole program till you come on up. We're going to stop the whole program. Stand up here. All the way up. The three daughters are here. Who's going to speak? Robin. Here we go. Say anything? All right. Do you want to say anything?
I just want to tell you that my father worked all his life to take really good care of his daughters. 4 daughters, and he took really good care of us. And he was the nicest man you could ever meet. I don't think I ever met a man nicer than my father. So I want you to know that, because Black people are pushed aside like you're less. I want you to know, because of the pushing aside, you're more. Thank you.
And of course, I want to do one thing. Cyrus, you have anything you want to say to everybody?
Hello.
Anything else?
My school's great.
And what did you learn when you learned about this? What did you learn when you found out about this?
I learned that my family can always be great ancestors to myself, to my family, or to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and we'll continue with our program. But really glad to let my cousin know that he is a part of history. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. I decided to stay low because I have a new name. My name is Jackie Glenn, and I'm the board chair of the African American Museum, Boston and Nantucket. I want to give you a warm welcome. I know you could have done a lot more things, but you chose to spend this evening with us, and for that we are eternally grateful. This place is a gem, and if you haven't been to our Nantucket site, please come visit us this summer. You don't even have to wait until the summer, but summer is it's better. And so I want to welcome you. I want to encourage you. Angela didn't tell me to say this, but you know, I don't really listen. But I really want to encourage you to support the museum in any way you can. And I think a lot of times when people hear support, they think money. And of course we'll take money, but we will take your talent. We'll take anything that you have. If you have a couple of hours, if you know someone who wants to be on the board, let them call me. Anything that you can do, that's deemed support. So without further ado, I would like to welcome, and make sure I'm doing this right, Angela, the musical ensemble. It's time for the music. The members are, I know Rhiannon is going to get me, Giddens, and Sandeep Nas, and Neville Sumbo. Let's give them a warm, warm, warm welcome. Thank you.
Asheville Junction, Swannanoa Tunnel, all caved in, babe, all caved in. Last December, I remember, wind blow cold, babe, wind blow cold. When you hear my watchdog howling, somebody's round, babe, somebody's round. When you hear that hoot owl squalling, somebody's died, babe, somebody's died. I'm going back to Swannanoa Tunnel. That's my home, babe, that's my home. Hammer falling from my shoulders all day long, babe, all day long. Thank you so much. We are from the Silkroad Ensemble. I'm Rhiannon Giddens, this is Sandeep Das, and this is Niwel Tsumbu. And we are going to present some of the music that we have been working on for the last few years, really. The Railroad project was a long project, and it should have been, because it's a lot of history. And we wanted to really sit in that history and not just sort of toss off some music. We wanted to sit in that history and see what music came. And that song, Asheville Junction, was one of the ones that was a very early inspiration for me, because it is a very specific story of a song that had made its way into bluegrass circles as Swannanoa Junction or Asheville Junction or Swannanoa Tunnel, and had been really kind of separated from its origins. But it originated as a black work song, as incarcerated men blasted their way through the tunnel to cross over into Tennessee from North Carolina, and there was a huge cave-in. And there were these two academics from Warren Wilson College in Western North Carolina who found a recording, the only recording of a black singer singing this song and connecting it to a tradition of work songs that had been completely forgotten in this history. And for me, this was something that really highlights how history is hiding in plain sight. And it takes, people like these two men, went digging into the archives and went, asking people, and just would not stop until they found the origins of the song. And that was very inspiring to me. So it became sort of the lodestar for me in this project. The Railroad project was my first kind of flagship project for Silkroad. And so as a North Carolina girl, it meant a lot to have that connection to my home state. So we're going to now do a song that is a connection between music that I've been digging into, and that Niwel himself has been, looking into music from his homeland of the Congo. And should we do the song and talk about it, or talk about it and then do it? What do you think? We do the song. Do the song. We're going to do it, and then we'll tell you. Then we'll tell you what it means.
danga, mama lopake, pipi danga, pipi danga, pipi danga, mama lopake, pipi danga. Pipi danga, mama lopake, pipi danga, pipi danga, pipi danga, mama lopake, pipi danga, kaina bimate, pipi danga, baninga ninga, pipi danga, bateki singa, pipi danga, nama bakwa papaya, pipi danga, bonaza kitoko, pipi danga, bonaza makasi, pipi danga. Pipi danga, mama lopake, pipi danga, pipi danga, pipi danga, mama lopake, pipi danga, gaina bimate, pipi danga, baninga ninga, pipi danga, pataki singa, pipi danga, nama bakwa papaya, pipi danga, bonaza kitoko, pipi danga, bonaza makasi, pipi danga.
So that tune is a tune called Pompey Ran Away that I was playing on my banjo. This is a replica from 1858, this banjo. That's what it sounds like this. It's much closer to the African antecedents to the banjo being a creation of the African diaspora in the Caribbean in the 16 and 1700s before it became known as an instrument in America. And that's why I love this instrument, because it would be skinhead. This is the first kind of, as the banjo moved to a commercial instrument, this is the first kind of non-homemade style banjo. So it's at the crossroads of Africa and Europe. And so this tune was from 87 or something like that. It was published in a book of tunes in Scotland, of American tunes and Scottish tunes, and it was listed as a Virginia Negro jig. And it was now jig back then just meant dance. It didn't, and it was also a signifier for a black tune. Actually, it's a very interesting history. And Pompey was a very common name for an enslaved man, so it was called Pompey Ran Away. So I've been intrigued by this tune because of the short, repetitive motifs. Really made it feel like it had African DNA, musically speaking. And so I played it for Newell, and Newell said,
"Well, as soon as I heard it, it reminded me of a song that we grew up singing." And then it's called Pipi Danga. And basically the song says, Pipi Danga, Pipi Danga. My mom told me I shouldn't go out, because if I go out, the stranger, she went out and the stranger his friend sold him to strangers, because he was strong and beautiful. So as soon as I heard the part, that's what it reminded me of. But I've been asking everybody, because I want to find out who wrote that song and when it was written. But, in true African fashion, nothing is written down. Everybody keeps saying, oh, we used to sing that when we were younger. My mom said the same thing. My grandparents said the same thing. So don't really know where it's from. But it's just that part, hearing Pompey Run Away was like, it's like a missing part of this. As soon as I heard it, I heard Pipidanga. So it's not as happy as it sounds. But
Yeah, but for me now, those songs, those pieces are together. It is the song. I don't do it one without the other. Yeah. No, for me, it's whether you have to do a lot of when you deal with this kind of history. It's an ephemera. You have scraps, and so when you're creating, you have to be imaginative and also sit in the spirit of it rather than the literalness of it. Like, who knows whether this is actually the same song or connected? It doesn't matter, because you can feel it immediately, And so it's the kind of thing where I would say, I wouldn't put it in a history book, but I would put it in a music book. That's the difference. So now we're going to do a song written for the Railroad Project for Cecile McLaurin Savant, right? We're doing that one next, right? And this was a really amazing composition that she wrote, and it's very railroad oriented, which I don't even need to, I'm just gonna sing it. But where is it? Here it is.
Have you seen my man? Have you seen my man? He's the finest man in all the land, and he loves me like no one can. Tell me, brother, have you seen my man? His arms spread out a mile wide. His arms spread out a mile wide. When he holds me, I look just like a child. And because I feel safe inside, my smile spreads out a mile wide. His eyes are dark and deep. His eyes are dark and deep. 500,000 secrets they do keep. How I wish I could find the key, but he keeps it hidden far from me. His lips are sweet and soft. His lips are sweet and soft. When he kisses me, I get lost in the center of a midnight maze. I could linger here for all my days. His voice can shake the ground. His voice can shake the ground. I have never heard a greater sound. When he hollers, he takes me down. When he whispers, I am spellbound. He smells like earth and rain. He smells like earth and rain. I could sip on him like champagne. I could take him in like cocaine. It's a feeling that I can't explain. They said he went down the track. They said he went down the track. They told me that he never come back. But the secret that no one knows is I'll follow him wherever he goes. I'll run behind the train. Oh, I'll run behind the train. My feet will fly, I'll feel no pain. And no matter how far it goes, I will follow him without repose. The track is like a snake. The track is like a snake. It is leading me to my heartbreak. If I stopped, would it make me weak? I can feel my heart begin to leak. I'm turning into a train. I'm turning into a train. There is fire and steam inside my brain. Am I spending it all in vain for something I will never We got more. Thank you.
So one of the wonderful members of Silkroad, who's been in Silkroad for a very long time, our wonderful pipa master Wu Man, that was obviously a central part of the story as well because of so many Chinese workers that helped build the railroad, particularly the western side of it. And so this was a contribution that she brought. It's called Rainy Day. And she was thinking about the women left behind, you know, because it was mostly male workers who came over from China, and they would send money back home, and they'd come back once a year if they could, and, you know, and there's children kind of stair-stepped by the times that their husband was able to come back home, because there were, as we may or may not know, the very first legislation that was written in America that was specifically race tied to limiting immigration was the Chinese Exclusion Act. So this is a song called Rainy Day.
Luo shui jian luo, luo shui jian luo, luo shui luo dao, wo shen bian luo, 去了一生，又无散落，光知道来真可怜
We just have two short pieces left for you. We'll try to squeeze them. We'll try to squeeze them into 5 minutes. But next one is a composition of Newell's. So I'm just going to sit and enjoy this one. So.
It's called Milimo.
This note kills me every time.
Well, we'll just end this portion of the evening where we began in North Carolina. This is a piece that is a very common song, but the version that we do is from a North Carolina fiddler named Joe Thompson, who was an African American fiddler that I learned from when he was in his 80s. And this fiddle is unhappy with me, so we'll see how it goes.
It's very hot in here. Usually I'm like, coming to venue, I'm like, it's so cold. This is the first time I'm complaining. First time ever. It's like... Don't you worry. Doom and gloom, doom and gloom.
Ready? Thank you so much.
That was amazing. Thank you. We're not done yet. Give us a few minutes, and we're going to set up for a panel discussion.
I know Rhiannon is transitioning from performance mode to panel mode, so we'll be patient as we wait for her. But I do want to introduce our lovely panelists for the evening. First up is Ingrid Monson, who is the Quincy Jones Professor of African American Music at Harvard University. Let's give Ingrid a round of applause. Beside Ingrid, we have Cliff Notes, who is the founder of We Black Folk and Hip Story, a musician themselves as well. And also with us, Angela Tate, Chief Curator and Director of Collections here at the Museum of African American History, Boston and Nantucket. All righty, folks. So first, I'm just curious about what your reactions are to having that performance in this space. And Angela, I'm actually going to start with you because I know you know how significant this space is.
Well, first I'm going to say that at the end of February, we worked with Jonathan Gonzalez to host a choral performance that they had built on the architectural renderings of this meeting house. And so this performance seems like a continuum of finding history through sound and music, because a lot of times, oh, look, my shoe just fell off. A lot of times, Black history is found in fragments, as you mentioned before the performance. And so being able to find those fragments and tease them out a little through music and through sound and through movement is always what we should be doing, particularly in spaces like this, which are active. They are not just supposed to be passively consumed and encountered.
Excellent. And Rhiannon, so, thanks so much for that lovely performance. Let's give it up one more time for Rhiannon Giddens, Artistic Director of Silkroad. And Rhiannon, I was just asking each of the panelists what it meant to have that performance happen here in the space, given that is so historic. I heard someone behind me talk about how the acoustics were just right, because you got these nice wood panels, and you really kind of took us down the American Railroad and in your own unique ways. So what was that like for you?
Y'all can hear me, but all right. I think that place is important, and it becomes more important. I don't know what everybody else said, so I might be repeating stuff. But
You're only second. You came right on time.
Second.
Don't
Okay,
worry.
great. I think place is important ever more now. You know, I made a record last year where I went to the places where the tunes came from, and we played them in those places outside. You know, during one of the locust explosions. It was wild, you know. So those sounds place those recordings not only in place but in time. And so I think the more that we lose anchor with this digital world and this idea of being able to go anywhere, anytime, with anything, I think, you know, bringing things back into place is going to be more and more important.
I think, first of all, that there are Black people in Boston. And if you listen closely, you felt them. Not only are there Black people in this room, but there are spirits in this sacred ground here that are being woken by our musical traditions. And that's why our music and our art is so powerful and connected to everything that we do. So, yes, I'm grateful to even be in this space while these spirits are with us as well.
And I would say to have spaces like this have been hard fought by Black Americans, and it's a privilege to hear it here and hear the voices of the ancestors, and to have people committed to this history when we live in a time when the powers that be simply want to erase it again.
Absolutely. Now, Rhiannon, we obviously heard the blends of so many different sounds from across the globe that were all honoring sounds from Black Americans. And not only Black Americans, from you know, people, Chinese and indigenous people who worked on the railroad. But tell me about the parallels between the Silk Road and the American Railroad, and the parallels, how those parallels sound.
Yeah, so the thing about roads is that when you are walking along a road, you change what you see and you are changed by it. You know, right? When peoples move from place to place, and humans have been moving from place to place since the beginning. No matter what people want to say around here, we move. You know, and a lot of times, unfortunately, it is for, you know, sad reasons. People move because they have to. They don't move because they want to. Right? Whether they're being made to move, or, you know, the amounts of famines that have happened in human history, all of that stuff, right? So the idea of, you know, a road changing and being changed, you know, people along it. Obviously, the Silk Road was a mercantile road, you know, and the railroad was a road of money. You know, the railroad was all about opening up the rest of the country to business interest, right? That's what the railroad was for, is to make sure we could get goods, you know, to go from like weeks and months to days, you know, from coast to coast, changed everything. And the people who made money off of that were not the people who were making the railroad. So the idea of, you know, the Silk Road actually not ending in China, but just coming around the ocean and ending and continuing through California, and then of course through the Transcontinental Railroad all the way to the East Coast. It connects the whole world, you know? And so that, for me, it was kind of irresistible, you know, as a first project so it's, you know, the original ensemble was, you know, thinking about the cultures that go along the traditional Silk Road. And I was like, well, I'm coming in as an American, deeply American, and concerned with American history. But the thing is, American history is world history, right? The people who make up American culture are global cultures. So for me, it was like, well, here we go. This is a way to bring the world story, well, just remind us that the world story was in America all along,
And Angela, I mean, I can only imagine how excited you were when this project was coming about and when you saw the possibility for the museum to be part of it. Tell us a little bit about that, but also about some of those other real life stories similar to George C. Greenidge that are behind the music.
So, as I said before, I am really appreciative of moments where we get to activate this space beyond a typical tour of this is what the floorboard is made of. That in the last pew, that's the original pew. And also being able to connect this history to the present day. And so very happy that Chip was here to share a story, and also descendants of that person, that his daughters and great grandson, but just thinking about the role of descendants, particularly in the context of Black history in Boston. So I always like to point to finding those stories. And so that's why when WBUR wanted to interview me about this moment, I said, there's an entire collection of oral histories that UMass Boston has free on their website that they had collected to form that exhibition that's at Back Bay Station. And I would walk through the station all the time. And one time I stopped, I was like, what is this about A. Philip Randolph? Because to my mind, he's associated with New York and Philly to me. Why are they commemorating here in Boston? And so this was a moment to link my questions to the presence of that installation at Back Bay, and also the fact that these people are still here. It isn't just a historical moment that, oh, that's nice. Like, everybody is still here.
And it wasn't so long ago,
Yes,
right?
precisely.
Like, yeah, 100%. I think it's so easy for us to be like, oh, 1854, 97 articles, that was that long ago. But Chip was standing right up here with the picture of the article, right? And it's fascinating to me, too, because as Rhiannon was closing out Swana Noa Tunnel and giving us the history behind that song, I did a little Googling and found a line on a website that said, for years, the history of that music was obscured by white musicians, right? Which you read between the lines and can only imagine what that means. But Cliff, it made me think about the importance of sort of keeping records through song. And how do you think that this project is a reflection of that?
Yeah, first of all, I love this project. I think it's extremely important for our continuance and our survival as we grow and expand as Black people. If we look at the American railroad system, it's pretty much a long road to get there, but it's essentially the start of social media. And with Black people always being the mainstream, we're the mainstream of all of art. And we're not always starting at the mainstream. We're always started as the subversion of the mainstream until somebody gets it, and then they co-opt it, and then it becomes mainstream again. We've seen that time and time again. So I think what this project is doing is reclaiming that and setting it forward at the beginning and saying, no, this is ours, it's recorded in the ways that y'all recognize recordings, and we're going to maintain our history throughout the rest of history moving forward. So I think that is why it becomes extremely important.
And there is a tradition, the griot tradition, which I know that you are very much steeped into, and you are as well, Ingrid, that does that record keeping as well, the West African griot tradition. Tell us a little bit about how that connects.
Well, I think it's very deeply connected. I've done a bunch of work in Mali, where there's this huge tradition of telling histories and stories that embed the values of the culture. And they're used to teach generations those values and to commemorate history. So in Mali, it's the history of the Sunjata and the Mali Empire, and what they went through to create the Mali Empire, the spiritual force of the values and the spiritual needs and the role of music in raising that culture and civilization. And I think African American musicians here do a similar thing.
It's when hearing you talk about that and just thinking about it is something really kind of occurred to me, which is, you know, a lot of the instruments that went into what we know now as the banjo, the ones that to me are the most connected in technique and in the way that they look are folk instruments. They're not griot instruments. And I think that's very interesting because I wonder, I feel like there's probably less, I don't know how many griots actually or jellies made it over because they would have been protected, it feels like to me. Now this is me speculating, right? And so the musicians, the majority of musicians who would have come over would have been folk musicians. You know, like the accounting is a folk instrument, it's not a griot instrument. They're very different castes, right? You know, that's a lineage. And so I wonder if we were cut off from those traditions, we had to create them in creolization, you know, and that's one of the places that the banjo was central, because the banjo became an instrument in the Caribbean, and it became an instrument for all these disparate people from different parts of Africa, different religions, different languages to come around. And the Europeans saw that and they outlawed it and they broke it and they noticed, you know, that it was something that people were drawing strength from. And so I think, anyway, I'm really interested now in thinking about that as a, you know, we had to create our own griot tradition, like from the ground up, you know, because I don't know, I'm just...
It's kind of always been that, right? Like if you look back at slave ships, from slave ships, and the first slaves getting into America, they outlawed drums because they recognized how we were able to communicate with percussion. And with that, we ended up creating something new out of that. That's kind of always been Black history. When you look at soul food, and soul food being what it is, it was started from the scraps. We were given very little, and we turned it into magnificent, beautiful things.
And also it was evolutionary in terms of, like, you think about jollof rice, and how we got jambalaya, or like you think about fufu and how we got hot water cornbread, right? Those sorts of things. This is something, we have a whole episode of Rooted that explores that, so shameless plug there. Check it out, it's all connected. Ingrid, go ahead.
But the other connection is from that region of Africa, which was one of the first layers of the trade in the enslaved. There were a lot of string instruments. I mean, people tend to think of African music as primarily rhythm, but this is a whole rich heritage of string instruments, the ngoni, the, you know, continga that you talk about, also one-string violins. So violins were, you know, a natural instrument for people in the United States to take up. And if we look at the 19th century, a lot of enslaved musicians played the violin.
There's a whole yeah, whole lot in that. we won't get started.
So Angela and Rhiannon, I imagine you have some thoughts to add about this question. This project has been around the country 3 times. How is it received in different places? Because I'm thinking about the South, right? The South might receive it a little differently than, say, Boston would, but maybe not.
I mean, it's like, I think it's been received really well wherever it's gone, because it's like we're so detached from our history in such a way, you know what I mean? So it's just like, even just thinking about that, people are like, oh, you know, and just seeing everybody on the stage together, and just like, you know, in the show, me and Wuman, the pipa master, like I played banjo and she played pipa, and I sang Rainy Day, you know, in that show. And it's like, and then you see it here with Newell playing pipa on his guitar because he's a genius. And you see, you know, like having all of those things come together. I mean, that's what Silkroad is. You know, and so I saw the response was very good wherever we went. I didn't see any differences really, because the history is kind of, I feel like it's equally distant from all of us, you know, so it was equally welcomed.
Yes. I mean, the reason why there is this idea that Boston does not have a Black history is because when we're thinking about the Great Migration, Boston is never considered to be a major node on that trip from the South. So I am thinking about the context of, there is this belief that we're not connected. I mean, or that those of us who are transplants, which granted I am, but there is still this continuous idea that those who are bringing this history are not from here. And so I think that this is a moment to add to that layer of complexity around who is still here. I also was talking to Ben Hartley earlier, and he was wondering, like, at one point, did the pews, were they moved aside and people dance? I mean, I kind of wanted to dance, but I was like, I'm professional. I work here. But I mean, granted, the restoration rooted this place in 1855 because they had the most amount of records related to that time. So who knows? Maybe 1820s they were moving these pews aside and dancing, and so this performance is basically embodying a bit of that history that we have lost in our own selves.
I mean, Newell and I were downstairs playing tunes from the year that this was settled in, 1855. Old banjo tunes that sound like they were written yesterday. You know, this history is alive, you know, if we allow it to be, and looking it full in the face. But this is part of that, you know, and it's really, these kind of events bring those things together and like put things in 3D.
Lovely, lovely. So I do want to leave some time for audience questions. I don't think we have a whole lot of time, so please, quick questions, not statements. Always have to give that disclaimer, but we would love to hear your name.
This is for Rhiannon. So the music is in all these different languages. How do they come to you, and then how do you perfect them when you're speaking because of the accents and all that stuff?
That's a good question. In my time with Silkroad, I've had to sing in a lot of different languages, and I was a trained opera singer, so I learned the International Phonetic Alphabet, and that has really stood me in good stead because when I hear the sounds, I write them down with that alphabet, and it really helps me. And then I also listen. And so when Wu Man taught me the song in Chinese, and I said, sing it for me, speak it for me. So I just listened to the recording, and what does it feel like in the mouth? You know, the zhu sounds, like how close can I get, you know, not being a native Chinese speaker. The Lingala is what I was singing. Pipidanga, that's the language that Newell speaks from Congo. And so you know, teach it to me, tell me if I'm doing it wrong, you know, and you just do it. Every language has its own musicality. And so the more that you can crawl inside it, you know, the more you can pay honor to it when you sing it, knowing that you're never going to get it perfect. But if you're really going for it, if there's a native speaker in the audience, they'll hear that you're really trying, you know. So that's what I really am very fanatical about the languages. You know, I sing Japanese and Irish and Scots Gaelic, and I try not to put it out there until I feel confident that I can at least say I tried my best.
Is there any modern day history that you implement in your music today?
Modern day
music?
Yeah.
Because I have another question. I'm curious if the history that you're utilizing for your music is based around pain and suffering. And then, you know, my first question was, is there any modern day history like yesterday could be somebody's history as we move forward in our lives? Is there any of that stuff that you implement in your music today as well?
The history of yesterday is today. So what I do is I pull, because that's my work. You know, there's other people's work, they go the other way, right? But my work is I go to the past and I bring it forward, Sankofa, right? So when I wrote a song about an enslaved woman, it was an ad in the newspaper. This is a song that I wrote. And it said, she has with her a 9-month-old baby who is at the purchaser's option. Now this is 1798, Rhode Island, right? This is the other thing we forget, right? And I wrote a song about that. It's called At the Purchaser's Option. Now with me and my work, it's always about how we survive and thrive. It doesn't stay in the pain, right? It's painful, but it's the idea is, you know, you can take my body, you can take my bones, you can take my blood, but not my soul. There are women enslaved and men and small children and all sorts of people enslaved right now in this world. that song stands for them too, you know? And it's not about them staying there. It's about how do we raise awareness so that we can help break them out. So that's how I don't know if that answered your question, but for me, that's how I look at it. Anybody else wants to answer that?
Okay, we have time for one more question. The sister in the back, please.
I'm Patrice Green. Thank you all so much for this wonderful performance. Hey, Angela. We began this evening talking about place in public history. We talk a lot about sense of place and what music does for us in that sense of place. Can you talk a little bit about how that participatory engagement interacts with the sense of place? A lot of people talk about when they land in the motherland or whatever motherland they come from, they can just feel it. How does the music bring that out of you?
Is this for all of us? Rhiannon's looking at me like I have the answer right away.
I mean, I've talked a lot already.
Well, I think you're bringing up place, and I think I'm going to bring it back to Boston and this idea of there not being Black people in Boston. I'm actually coming to the realization as of like maybe a couple days ago that I think that's always been by design, and being able to say there are no Black people out in Boston so that Black people won't go to Boston. If we look at our history, from Elma Lewis to A. Philip Howard to Martin Luther King was here. There's a reason why there's a Malcolm X mural on Dudley Square. Yes. Yes, and I think because of the resources that are here, and in your podcast, you talk about how at this time or around the early 1900s, this was the first time where segregated schools were no longer a thing here in Boston. So now you have Black people coming up to Boston to get an education where they couldn't get it anywhere else. So I think that whole idea of there are no Black people in Boston is by design so that we don't create that dangerous Negro that they're afraid of with those resources and those talents to be able to take over the world. So I think, thank you. And I see that in the musicians that are here with We Black Folk and the different Black musicians that are here in Boston and are able to do some remarkable things that have not been seen throughout the rest of the United States. So I think there's a reason why they don't want us here in this specific place. I will.
I'd like to take the place question in a slightly different way because I, as a student of musicians are constantly traveling and touring and not rooted in one place. And I want to get the Pullman Porters in here a little bit. And I'm thinking about Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Louis Armstrong, who all rented Pullman sleeper cars as a place of personal safety to travel in the South. And Duke Ellington had rented in the 30s, 2 Pullman car sleepers and a 70-foot baggage train. And what would happen is they'd go into a place, into a city in the South in which they couldn't go into any of the hotels or restaurants or whatever, and they'd get the train parked off the track, and they literally lived in the sleeper cars. They rehearsed, they ate. The Pullman Porters took excellent care of them, and it became a place of safety when they were in the midst of all this traveling around, in which the traveling around brought the richness of the music going on across the country to many different locales.
And I want to continue to point to that installation and also a sculpture of A. Philip Randolph. Today is his birthday, by the way. The fact that I love public transportation. My grandfather was actually one of the people that was instrumental for rural transit in America. And whenever I move to a new city, I've lived in several places, I always love to look at the transit system. I love riding buses, I love riding light rails, subways, etc. And the first thing I always notice is how deeply that is tied to segregating communities. I always rant about the silver line to anyone who is willing to listen to me about this is not a real line, it's a bus. But it's a bus that was created to say, well, we will still connect Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, et cetera, to this side of Boston. But I'm always like, if I'm on this side of Boston, because I work on this side of Boston, anytime I want to go down to Roxbury, Dorchester, et cetera, it's an hour. Whereas if I get in an Uber, it's 15 minutes. And so that's also by design of keeping Black people out of particular spaces or telling them you're not allowed to be here, which is why I also find it very interesting that this Pullman Porter, A. Philip Randolph installation is at Back Bay. That's still a major train station, but when you think about it, you're not thinking about the Black community. You're thinking about, I'm getting on the Amtrak to go to New York. I'm gonna get on this Amtrak to go to Springfield. But this space was created in the late 1980s to commemorate these people in this community who contributed so much to Boston, which is why I'm always like, what does it take to make these stories stick? Why does everyone think about Paul Revere or they think about anyone else when they think about Boston? But we have to continuously say there is this Black history, a moment like this, oh, remember A. Philip Randolph and the Pullman Porters. Like, what does it mean for us to continue to have to keep telling the same story over and over? And it doesn't actually penetrate the idea of the story of Boston and the story that Boston tells about itself.
Well, let's give it up one more time for our panelists. Thank you, Angela, Rhiannon, Cliff, and Ingrid. Okay, so we are getting ready to close out our program, folks. I am going to turn it over to Brian Boyles, who's the Executive Director of MAAH Humanities, for our closing remarks.
What really more am I supposed to say other than thank you? Rhiannon said that as human beings we move. We move because of song. We have song because we needed to carry stories in order to navigate from the earliest times of this race through challenging territory, to pass on in the fear of night some solace, and to talk with each other about the people that came before us. Those stories are why we at MAAH Humanities want to do this work. We need to be able to navigate, and tonight I think that we got many maps that we could follow into a present that is better than the one that so many Americans are experiencing right now. There's nothing like song. Think about how you felt just now. Think about the things you thought about. I thought about my wife. I thought about the railroad tracks that ran through my neighborhood. I thought that I might be hearing the greatest guitar player I'd ever heard in my whole life. Black history is American history, and Black Boston's history is global history. How does it stick? The more people, Black, white, Asian, Latino, Indian, Indigenous, who continue to say that Black history and that Black Boston history and that Black Boston people exist, the better fight that we have to fight. We cannot let up on that, because we know the reason that these stories are trying to be silenced right now is to break us apart. I have great gratitude for George C. Greenidge and Chip Greenidge. I have great gratitude for Angela Tate and A. Philip Randolph. I have great gratitude for Rhiannon Giddens and for Melnia Cass. I have great gratitude for the Pullman Porters and the Porterettes and the maids and the people who will clean up this room tonight. Let us please, as Rhiannon said, remember that history is alive if we allow it. I think we have to fight for it right now, and I hope that, like tonight, that fight has song and joy and gratitude in it. Thank you all so much.